Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bales Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
We got our funding from our Senate.
Hello and welcome once again to the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I have three guests chomping at the bit to talk about what they love, and that's nursing. More specifically this week, we're going to talk about the nursing shortage in the works here and across the nation. What is the state of Nebraska doing and various institutions to prepare to hopefully not have a nursing shortage, but certainly to make it not that we'll feel it, and we don't want to feel it, right? If we're in need of health care.
Right.
I want to welcome Charlene Kelly. She's the executive director of the new Nebraska Center for Nursing. That's one of the created institutions to help us plan a strategy. Marilyn Valerio is on the board of the Nebraska Center for Nursing. She's also an associate dean in the nursing division of the Nebraska Methodist College of Nursing. And Florence Brown is another board member with the Nebraska Center for Nursing, and she's administrator of the Creighton Union Women's Community Health Center, a very important organization. I've had contacts with them. They do a great job. Okay. Define nursing shortage. Does it just mean, oh, we're just not going to have it, we're going to be few shy of a full complement?
No, I think we're going to be more than a few shy. We have evidence now that we've got about a 10% shortage or vacancy rate in our nursing positions statewide.
Yeah, check the help wanted ads.
Right, pages and pages. We also know that the average age of our nurses is over 45. And we're going to lose about 25% of them to retirement in the next 10 years. The experts tell us that if we want to replace those that we're going to be losing due to retirement, we're going to have to increase our capacity in our schools by as much as 140%.
That's incredible.
It's huge. It's just a monumental undertaking, and what we're seeing now is kind of tip of the iceberg, and we know this is a shortage that's going to be unlike any that we've ever had, because we've had this large cadre of nurses that have been coming through the workforce, since they were in their 20s, and it's those post-baby boomer women that went into nursing back in the 60s and the 70s, and maybe even some of them earlier than that, and they're going to be retiring soon. And so we've got to take some action now to try to replace those, or we aren't going to have enough nurses when we need them.
So when was the Center for Nursing established? It's a fairly recent entity, is it not?
Yeah, it was established by the legislature in 2000, so we're just moving into our 6th year. We've just recently been, the legislature has said we need to stay in business for at least another 5 years.
I'm sure. and the whole idea is to create a strategy and help really guide the various parties involved, and hopefully the people that have the purse strings in the state into properly preparing for this, is it not? And what's your role as board members? You help in the strategizing, or?
I would say yes. We meet every other month during the year, and we all represent different entities that are within healthcare. And so some are educators, some are practice, some are the hospital association. It just depends, but we're all there together, which I think is a real benefit.
One of the benefits being an administrator in a community health center is that I talk to people in the community, and I bring my input to the board about what people are feeling about the nursing shortage, and we talk about strategies and some of the experience that they might even feel as being patients in hospitals, and how they feel that we have a nursing shortage, and talk about what we can do about it.
Yeah, because if they're feeling it now as patients or consumers of health care, then they're feeling not negatively about nurses. I think generally nurses have a pretty good reputation, but about the number of nurses and the time that they can spend with patients, then we know that we have a problem, because we're not even at this.
Right. Another issue that's really compounding this problem is that about the same time that all these nurses are going to be reaching retirement is the same time a lot of other people in the population are reaching retirement, and we know that as people get older, they need more nursing care. So just when the population gets to the point where we're going to need additional care, we're going to have fewer caregivers. So we need to try to close that gap.
Not to mention, most of the nursing faculty I know, and I'm sure there are younger ones, but maybe just because I've interviewed a lot of them, they're going to be looking at retirement. And so in addition to needing just more capacity, you're going to be needing to fill present capacity with qualified instructors. I'm sure that there are already some moving up the ranks, but that's just for the positions open now is going to be interesting.
I think in nursing education, Charlene mentioned that the practicing nurse right now is about 44 to 45 years of age on average. Nursing faculty on average are about 54. So we as faculty are even older than the practicing nurses, and part of that relates to the time it takes for you to earn the degrees that you need in order to be a faculty member, as well as the practice expertise that you need. So we are losing faculty probably at a more rapid rate than we're losing practicing nurses.
So the pipeline is just as long as, if not longer, to get, because usually they're working as a nurse and then working, they don't just get to drop everything and get those advanced degrees.
Right. Exactly.
So the pipeline could be a little longer, more tedious. So who is going to be affected? Virtually everyone. I mean, I'm thinking, I told you before the show, I have these nightmares of being in a nursing home and nobody's there. Maybe it's because I see all those want ads now, but there are so many different, let's run through the people that use nurses. I mean, we know hospitals, acute care facilities, but there's a lot more out in the community. Nurses are invaluable.
Very much so. In the community, assisted livings are in senior citizens. There's visiting nurses that come in, visit clients that are there, and there are few of them, and so many of their clients there are so sick. And there's it takes a lot of time to evaluate them and to get them referred to the areas that they need. And when you have few hands and you have more sicker people,
In fact,
it takes a lot more time.
I'm sorry. I can see the need for more visiting type nurses with the fact that there will be so many people, elderly people, and the trend is it's less expensive, and with the cost of health care to at least do what you can in the home, and then hospice care and those kinds of things, whether you go into a hospice or you have someone visit you. And
There are lots of entities out there that have recognized the value of having nurses on their staff that are places where maybe 30 years ago there wouldn't have been nurses employed. Industry, insurance, pharmaceutical companies, the managed care organizations, just lots of different places that have pulled nurses away from the traditional bedside roles.
And sometimes
which
at
is
higher
good,
salaries,
but it
which is good for them, but I
pulls
mean,
us thinner, yeah.
you need to keep the salaries up for, and I'm thinking, well, gee, salaries will get better because the demand will increase, but there's a demand for good teachers and things, and that doesn't necessarily mean that goes up.
And what we've seen when there's shortages is typically we see a lot of bonuses and that sort of thing being paid to the new graduates or the new employees, and not as much attention given to raising the salaries of those that have been there for 10
That's
or
a
20
short
years.
term usually,
It
and
is
then
a
it doesn't
short-term
compound
fix.
on an increase.
Right.
All right, let's talk about capacity. You're with the Nebraska Methodist School of Nursing. I know you're building a new facility,
We are.
or an addition,
We are.
or
We are.
something. I went to the
Actually, no.
groundbreaking. So, I mean, is everybody going to have to? Is it brick and mortar as well as just courses, or at least space, room?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. That when I belong, as our institution, we're part of the American Association of Colleges of Nursing, and they put out different reports. The major pieces where we see need in education, faculty is one of the first, classroom space, and then clinical experience sites. And so, yes, you do need classroom space and you need faculty, but you also have to be able to have people practice.
The hands-on.
Absolutely. And right now, with every school, enrollments have gone up, particularly in the Omaha area, well, I think across the state. And because of that, there are more students needing to use the clinical sites, which makes it very difficult because we have scheduled students on Fridays and Saturdays, we have schedules on students on evenings, on days, just to get them into clinical sites for practice.
And that takes additional educators too.
Yes.
I mean, that's a very important part, I would say critical part for me as the consumer, to make sure that the hands-on was properly supervised,
Right.
and that they, they met the bill on that.
And those ratios have to be kept fairly low. One faculty member to 8 students, or sometimes fewer, just so that they can ensure the safety of the patients.
Let's talk about what's in the works to fix some of these things. The legislature did take a step this last session in trying to get more nurses to get that additional education to teach.
Right.
LB 146.
LB 146 passed. It's a program that establishes a loan program for nurses to go into graduate education to become faculty. For every year that they're funded through the program, then they have to agree to teach for at least 2 years in order for that loan to be forgiven. Unfortunately, we have just some very small amount of seed money in that program. So one of the goals of the center this year is going to be trying to find sources for funding to beef up that loan fund so that we can issue some loans.
So there's no guarantee at this point financially that you
No.
could meet the demand if
Right.
so you're going to be shaking the trees a little bit.
We will,
Okay,
both for funding and for people to be interested in teaching.
well that's good, and that is so important, and that's a big quantum leap. You can be a good anything, but it doesn't mean you can teach it. And you know, and I've taken stabs at teaching, and it's not easy. Just because you have the know-how doesn't mean it. So I assume those teaching courses help people learn what teaching's about instead of just getting more medical education.
Right. Combination of both, I think.
I think the other piece with teaching, though, is something we cannot always match the salaries of practice. And so not only are you asking people to leave practice, get more education, which will cost them money, plus they may not make as much.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, I'm serious.
You won't.
I'm very serious.
I guess I'm shocked because we know, I mean, in most of the academic world, and it doesn't always work even in K through 12 and that sort of thing, but the more degrees you get, there's a factor that it goes up.
It should be.
And it used to be that there were some benefits that kind of balanced that lower salary. It was pretty much Monday through Friday, day work. You didn't have weekends. You didn't have evenings. But
Maybe
as
you didn't have
Marilyn,
to teach as much in the summer.
right, you had summers off. But as Marilyn said, because of the clinical scarcity, now we're doing students evenings, weekends, summer, you know, just to get them the experience. So we've lost some of those benefits that being a faculty member used to have, and haven't offset it with increased salary. So that's a real issue.
Well, at least you're getting a start to at least make it more financially feasible if people are of the mind to do that.
And
So-
raises awareness too.
Absolutely. All right, now students, if I have a daughter that's coming up and wants to be a nurse, and I am reading online that many states are turning down qualified applicants because they don't have the capacity, and those states are absolutely in jitters right now. So I mean, in other words, I might at 18, 19, 20 say I might want to go for that RN, that kind of that first step, or that baccalaureate degree in nursing, you know, the full bachelor's degree, and I meet the requirements, but I'm not going to get in a nursing school. So I'll go work on something else.
That's right. And probably not come back to nursing without a lot of encouragement.
Are we having that problem yet?
I think every school in Nebraska has a waiting list, and we turned away, wasn't it 400, between 400 and 500 students last year.
And what's your capacity?
Right now,
She's
I
talking
know,
about statewide.
statewide, I'm
Or
talking
what's the
about.
state capacity then?
Oh, well, you know, I don't think I can even tell you that.
In other words, is that a lot of students, or is that just a few here and there
We
at the
have
different schools?
about 600 or so graduates a year, I believe.
Okay, so the new
But that's-
class
yeah,
is
that's
600,
probably.
give or take.
Yeah.
Assume everybody stays on track. Let's
Yeah,
just take
right.
that for a number.
That'd be
So you're
close.
turning 2/3 of an additional class
away.
away.
across the state. Right.
And we're talking abroad,
Right.
you know, rounding
And again,
off.
it's because we don't have the faculty, we don't have the clinical, we don't have the classroom space.
That's scary. I mean, if we did
Or
that
the money to fund those.
to teaching, let's say just you know, K through 12 or whatever, which is, you know, half the teachers quit anyway in the first 5 years, new teachers, because they're burned out or it's more difficult or whatever reason, or it wasn't a good fit. If we had to turn away half of those people, we'd be in a mess in education right now. If we didn't. So
I think one of the drawbacks too to having classrooms and having so many students in a classroom is a lot of students choose to go to schools, particularly the smaller schools, because of the size. And right now, I know many nursing courses, not just at our school, but across, are having, you know, 30, 40, 50 people in a class, which is a large classroom. Where you have a benefit is your clinical groups are smaller. So your teacher, your ratio student to teacher is, as Charlene says, 1 to 8, 1 to 9, 1 to 6, depending on your site. And so that gives the student the contact they need. But the large classrooms are a challenge, and you really have to be innovative and good at it.
Now, do we have nursing schools pretty much all around the state?
We do. We have, both programs that prepare RNs and those that prepare LPNs. We've got, of course, more schools in the eastern end of the state because that's where the population is. But the community colleges across the state, most of them have both associate degree programs which prepare nurses at the RN level, and then they also have the LPN program. So we've got pretty good distribution of our educational programs, so that young people that are interested in nursing don't necessarily have to leave their community to go to school.
Which I understand is important in the rural areas. You don't necessarily, once they've seen Omaha, or once they've, it's harder to get them to come back to areas of the state that are already crying out for all health professions. So I think you use the expression before the show, they have to grow their own. And so there is capacity, or there will be building capacity to take care of that?
Well, and I think some institutions have added online programs using distance education methods to increase capacity for the rural areas as well. So there are some technology kinds of things that are going to benefit particularly rural areas, but you still need the clinical hands-on kind of supervision.
But the front end kind of stuff that you take when you first get into a program that is very science oriented, and that some of that, the book learning can be accomplished more online. So that's
a lot of it, yes.
And it is available. I mean,
Right.
good solid programs are available.
Right.
But again, you're going to need more hands-on. You're going to have to work with more of the limited number of doctors out in those areas.
I think you also have to think about people who might want to go to school. Do they have the technology available to them, and can they afford to buy it? And so sometimes with your loan programs that you have basic students, you can include the computer, you can include the internet, you can include those kinds of things in the educational costs, which is very much a benefit to them.
Oh, I didn't know that. And that's more loans, but on the other hand,
It allows them to stay where they are to do what they need to do.
which saves expenses. They may not
Exactly.
have to pay room and board.
Right.
Or drive or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, so we're coming online, so to speak, pun there, to get more capacity. There are, I understand, other technological things we can do. They've got, dummy isn't the right word, but
Simulators.
simulator. Thank you. It sounds so much better than dummies. They're very smart, as a matter of fact, are they not?
Right.
And what do these do? I mean,
Oh, they do a lot of things. I know when I went to school, we were talking before the show,
Yes.
it was pretty basic, Recessa Ann, you could push on her chest and you
It
could
was a mannequin.
breathe for her. It was a
It's
mannequin.
like a department store
But
mannequin.
now
weighing it.
they are computerized, and they have the capacity to breathe for you, to have a heartbeat, to give you different conditions where you need to react as the provider, as the nursing student, to say, okay, this is what this person needs, this is what I need to do. And you can use it to build skill, not only hands-on skill, but critical thinking and assessment skill.
well, that'd be great to have out in the community for kind of just even refresher kinds of things. But these cost money. These are not
They're
small
hugely
ticket items.
expensive.
Very large. You can go from a few thousand for the smaller, less computerized to over about 170,000 for one of the most computerized, most sophisticated pieces.
What was fascinating to me is that you were telling me you can teach at least the initial teaching phases of learning how to do an IV.
Sure.
With this sort of virtual reality
Right.
kind of thing.
Lots of the basic skills can be taught that way.
And that would build up practice time.
Right.
And maybe then when you get to the real thing, there's a less of a learning curve.
Well, as you know, like a lot of the nursing schools are looking for different clinical areas in order to get those experience. But if you have a simulator in which you can do some of those experience, then you can decrease your clinical time, and you don't have to compete for that same patient. Sometimes you have two nursing schools on the same
The poor
floor.
patient.
And there's so many nursing students that are on there. So, and then plus some of the patients just don't want to have nursing students.
When
So you
you're
have
sick,
to deal with that type of thing.
Sometimes you just don't want to deal with
yeah.
And the
I know.
simulator doesn't do that. It doesn't
Yeah.
turn you
and
away.
again, that learning, I just think that'd be great for the learning.
That's right,
curve.
it doesn't turn you away.
I think it builds confidence. I think the students feel better, but the faculty feel more confident. If you know that a student has done something, has checked off, knows the procedures, yes, it's anxiety provoking when you deal with the real person, but your skills are much, much stronger.
Okay, so that there's money there, and I'm assuming that the nursing schools that are, even the state-funded ones, and then the private ones like Methodist that depend on a lot of good donations to keep everything going, that you're going to have to ramp up just general fundraising and convincing legislators, and I mean this is a very multi-faceted
Extremely.
thing that's happening, and it's all got to come into place.
Right. We, at a recent meeting we attended, heard about some states that are using simulators in kind of regional facilities where numbers of schools, schedule time with the simulator so that they can do some sharing, so there isn't downtime for the simulator. And some of the EMTs and some other kind of training groups, respiratory care and all kinds of things, can use the same simulator, so it can get multi-use around the clock.
Cost sharing.
Bigger bang for the buck.
Right.
so
Share
to
the
speak.
costs.
Well, this all sounds good. I remember when there was a teacher shortage, a lot of the states were offering tuition payback, or kind of like the 2-for-1 with the teachers, that if you stayed in the state for so long, because I can see a competition coming up around the country. If I'm a young girl or a young man that goes into nursing, and I say, sometimes we don't think things through when we're a little younger, like, you can make so much more if you go to New York. Now, the cost of living doesn't always settle in until you actually pay rent out there.
Yes,
But there's going to be a competition for nurses, I'm guessing.
There already is, I think.
I know we get calls from the states surrounding us in this region asking for numbers, who's graduating, when they're graduating, can they send packets, can they come onto campus and talk to them about recruitment and coming to the armed forces are always looking and recruiting. So there is a very much of a competition for the students that you graduate.
So what if you could have anything you wanted tomorrow, shy of billions and billions of dollars, what would you want? I'm going to kind of go through here. From your perspectives, what would you say needs to be done now that you need money or resources for?
Dollars put into nursing education for more faculty, more space, more innovation, like the simulators, ways that we can increase our clinical capacity so that we have more graduates.
Marilyn?
Well, we need to increase capacity from a faculty and a school perspective, but we also need to increase the understanding of what it takes to become a nurse. We need to look at pulling in and educating at the middle grade school and high school level underrepresented groups. We need to appeal to them, and we need to get more male nurses, because we have to have a cross section. There's research that shows people respond better to caregivers who are like themselves, and we need to represent our communities better with who is doing nursing. It isn't just women, and it isn't just white women.
It has to be a reflection of the community. And Florence, you're out in the community. I bet you've got a wish list a mile long.
Well, yes, I think that everyone needs to step to the plate and really look at nursing and see how important it is to society. And to try, when they're talking about careers, talk about how nursing is a very, very rewarding career, and to encourage their children at a young age to look at nursing as a career, and to also to put their money where their mouth is, and try to make the salaries be more comfortable. That if I wanted to stop being a nurse and go into as a faculty, that my salaries would compensate for that, and still I can do the rewarding things that I want to do, because it's necessary and it has to be done.
Are there some short-term things? I think somebody mentioned to me that if you're retiring nurses and even nursing faculty could be used in a smaller capacity. So they're ready to retire. They're out of the door, whether they're an ER nurse or whatever. They've pretty much had it. But if there was some flexibility, so that they could pick up some work time, or just keep their foot in the door. They might miss imagine that, miss being around it. Is there any ways to think out of the box on that?
We've been asking on our workforce surveys the last several years, if you plan to retire in the next 5 years, what would it take to keep you in nursing a little longer? And hours is a lot of it. More flexible scheduling, shorter work shifts. You know, there's lots of technology out there that can help the older nurse so that it's not as physically demanding. I think utilization of some of those kinds of things. Keeping their benefits is something that people mention as something that would keep them in nursing longer if they could have, you know, flexible shifts and so they
Even
can maintain
partial
their
benefits
yeah.
these days. I mean,
That's
if you,
very
I don't know
important, too.
how, you know, HR departments and all the bean counters work, but there's where there's a will, there's a way on this, is there not?
Right.
Well, are other states, we talked about maybe they would try to steal our nurses, but they must be doing similar things right now, creating strategy, deciding where, if they can get money, where it would do the most good. How do we compare to what other states are doing in that regard? Anybody know?
Based on what you have sent, we get a lot of information from the centers for nursing that are around the country. I would say there are many states. Wasn't Missouri one that just recently had several $1 million they put into nursing and nursing education? So some states have stepped up with more, certainly with more financial monies from the state itself. I do know that.
Right. And there are some federal resources and that sort of thing that we hope to be able to tap into. You know, part of the problem that we face is that we've got a very minimally staffed and funded Center for Nursing, and so when you don't have much staff or much funding, you also don't have a lot of wherewithal to locate those resources that might be out there. So
And keep pushing.
right.
So I think probably things like this. I see Johnson & Johnson has got an ad you know, about being a nurse, and I mean I just say, you know, I wish I had another shot at being young, maybe, you know, because that was always sort of my third or fourth choice. So we have a minute left, and if you were talking to our audience, what would be the one thing you want them to take with them when they change the channel or go on to the next show?
I think I'd want them to take with them that, you know, nursing is a critical part of our healthcare industry, and that we are facing a shortage, and if they have the wherewithal to talk to their legislators or people with money that could help support this effort, then they should get behind it.
Well, we've run out of time, and I would love to sit here and talk about it because it is critically important. We are in critical condition almost. Thank you so much for being with us, Charlene, Marilyn, and Florence. And the website for the Center for Nursing, you've seen it during the show, it's easy, centerfornursing.org. See you next week.
To view this edition of Consider This or past programs, visit our website at unotv.unomaha.edu. For comments or questions, call 402-554-2516 during regular business hours. Consider This is a production of UNO Television.